I already hit it. Okay. Stand by. Hold on, I'm gonna turn the light on over here. All right, studio lighting. We gotta take care of studio lighting. Okay, great. 2 people waiting. I already got 1 thumbs up. Awesome. Haven to do, howdy. By the way, Haven, I talked with another party today that is also in the Manton area. And I said, hey, why don't we get together and get a Google map of your place and just start drawing some lines on it, you know, for fences and do a little planning and stuff like that. And I think we should do that with you. I think, you know, if you want to, it's a good exercise for us as well. So, you know, planning really is everything. When you're going to put together a farm where you're going to decide to build your house and stuff like that, it makes a lot of sense to go with an initial plan of somebody that's done it, so you can take some things into consideration, like where the humans are going to be, where the animals are going to be. Mostly everything we can change around, we can move fences and things like that. Like I've moved a lot of fences here, but homes, they're not so easy to move. So, all right. So we should do that. My wife is making me some chaga tea. I had a cup of it today, and I had planned to do a little bit of research on chaga to find out the ins and outs of it and what effect it has on you. I didn't get around to it, but I tell you this, I got really relaxed after I drank it. So maybe it was because I had it with my lunch, but I don't know. I got very, very relaxed and I just wanted to lay down for a little bit. And I didn't drift off to sleep, but I got up and I felt okay. You know, I usually just fall over for a little while after my lunch every day, which is kind of nice to be able to do that. All right. So I went through the tribe today, and I didn't see where we would have a full night of information there. And that's okay, because we can go a different direction. And I actually had another direction kind of thought of. And so long as we don't have a whole bunch of information on the tribe, I think we'll do that. Now, a couple of neat things have come up on the tribe. Number one, Andrew Cross came up with an idea of putting together a roster, and people could sign on it for the things that they're good at. And Andrew gave a little bit of his resume, some of the stuff that he's been doing, and the pictures to back it up. And he's got some real skills and some real understanding in some of these things, soils and different growing of different plants and things like that. He's really into the whole horticulture thing. So I think that's a good idea. At first, I kind of like, what, you know, but if you are good at something and you feel as though you want to put yourself in a position where if somebody was to hashtag your name, then it's like somebody saying, I want to hear what you have to say. Like this guy, Andrew Cross, I mean, I really want to hear what he has to say, because he appears to have a lot of knowledge that I don't have, and he's willing to give it to me for free. So that's pretty neat. When you think about this, you got a lot of people coming together and saying, hey, I'll contribute. It kind of reminds me of that story called Stone Soup, where I think it was, I don't know what war it was, but anyway, 3 soldiers wandered into this town, and everybody shut their shutters and their doors and stuff. And the soldiers set up their cooking pot, got a fire going, and then they threw in some stones. And a little boy came out and said, "So what are you doing?" And then they said, "Well, we're making stone soup, of course." And the little boy went back to his house and told his mom, "They're making soup out of stones." And she got interested, and she came out and she said, "Stone soup? I've never heard of that." "Oh yeah, it's wonderful. We make it all the time. It's a military secret." And the woman said, "Gee, I'd like to have some. Can I contribute some carrots to go in there?" And you know how the story turns out. All these people come out and they're all curious and stuff, and they're all contributing stuff to the stone soup. And then the soldiers, um, there's enough for everybody, and they dole it all out. And then at the end, the people in the town go and they look in the pot, and there's the 3 stones in there. All right, so everybody's had a good soup, but so that's kind of what the tribe is. We got a lot of people that are coming together, and they're sharing their information, and that is really cool. Okay, let's see if there was anything else that I wanted to comment on. You know, a lot of times there's stories here, and there's really interesting articles, but I'm not gonna comment on them. Here was a question from Mike Feeney, and he wanted to know how much of a pig's diet can be spent grains from breweries. We're big scroungers here, and I don't get any spent grains from breweries. But I would say to Mike Feeney, listen to the comments here. There were 17 or 12 people that commented, and these are people that are doing it. So I don't feed spent grains, so you don't want to know from me. But Jody Lynn Miller, Jason Sheffield, Bud Lane, Chad Van Tol, they all have experience with this and had some really good. Joe Brown's out in Maine, some really good practical real life experience with feeding spent grains. So that's what I would go with, you know. Okay, Jill is standing by here on the laptop. She wasn't with me last night, but she's sitting here on the laptop. So if there's any, are you staying?
I wasn't planning to.
Oh, she's not staying. So, but I'm going to tell you again, if there's any pertinent questions for tonight, please put them in caps. I'll try to, I don't know where my glasses are. I'll try to help you with that. If not, you know, so be it. Put it on the tribe and maybe we'll get to it again. Now, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, is going to be our regular Wednesday night meetup. It's a live chat. Jill's sitting there on her laptop, and she can forward all these questions to me. Now, we are going to up our game. You're just going to have to stand by. What?
Do we want to do the Zoom
Tomorrow? I'd like to.
Yeah.
I would like to. Okay, so stand by tomorrow. It'll be our normal Wednesday night, but we want to up our game by adding a Zoom component to it. And if somebody wants to engage, you know, you will have a code that you'll put in, and then you'll either be able to block out your camera and have no picture of you, or your picture will be there and it'll be kind of a split screen, in theory. We'll see how it goes. Tomorrow night will be a test run. If it doesn't work, then we'll just stay with the format that we have, which is fine. It's productive, and you know, every week that we go a little longer because there's more information that's being transferred, and we're having so much fun. So on the analytics from last night, we had 100 people with us. Our little view counter there said that we only had about 40. So I was not believing that little view counter because between me and our computer business manager slash type lady, it always is different. So I think we're doing a lot better than we thought, but I think those numbers will go up as time goes on. All right. While I was working today, I had a couple of phone calls, and I also checked in with some intelligence services that I monitor, have been for years. When things are happening, I like to get a lead on what's coming. And last week, I came to you and I said, hey, there is possibly a storm on the horizon. And last week's the time to start thinking about making some preparations for this storm that's potentially on the horizon. So then today, boom, ABC News, CBS News, the Center for Disease Control has come right out and said that Americans' life is going to be changed by this coronavirus. And that's all they said. And so they kind of lead you to believe that the coronavirus is going to be so deadly that it is going to close down the United States the way it's closing down China right now. And this is my educated opinion from the research that I do. And I'm just going to give you the numbers. 2,600 people in China have died. I mean, and it's a varying account, but they say died of the virus. Okay. Now, in the United States this year, 60,000 people will die from the flu. A lot of them are real old, a lot of them are real young, or people who are compromised in the middle. When they say compromised, that means sickly people, people who are sickly. When they get the flu, they can die from it, and they do. So every year we lose people in the United States to flu. And so there appears to be a component of this that's different than every year flu season here in the United States. It appears. I mean, what am I missing here? No one has died in the United States yet. And then I heard a briefing. The president was in India today, and he was questioned by some news people. And he says, well, we've had 20 cases, but so far everybody's doing good, and we don't anticipate any of those people passing away. And, I mean, he could be making it up. And the news, they could be making it up because they're going pretty wild on this virus thing now. But I have a tendency to think that the news is going to sensationalize it because for the last 10 years of my life, they always do. Around here, they will tell you the night before that school is canceled tomorrow because there's going to be a terrible storm. Now, it wasn't always like that, but lately the news has always just sensationalized everything. And so regardless of what I think, around here, when we're supposedly going to have a bad storm, they clean off the shelves. All right. Do I think that biologically you are going to be threatened by this virus? The way things are right now and the data that's out there now, I say no. But you are going to be affected by the Chinese haven't been locked down for a month now, and possibly about another month, or the middle of March is when they're supposed to open up some of the factories and get some of the stuff moving back into the supply chain. I think, yeah, there is going to be a hiccup here. All that said, I personally kicked off my 24-hour list today, personally in my home. And I said, okay, when ABC and CBS says time to go, there's going to be changes. That means tomorrow, the next day, people are going to start to move in the direction of securing some extra dollars out of their bank, some extra food from the store. And as soon as the crowds are all there, then that's when the possibility is that there could be a panic, you know? Okay. Now maybe there isn't. Maybe I'm wrong. Err on the side of safety when this is over tonight or even now. Go spend a few bucks, get a little extra grub. Don't wait until you have to stand in lines around the block. And even if you did that, you never know if anything's going to come of this anyway. You know, we don't know. But I figured I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't mention again tonight. So there it is. And my wife and I both, at the same time, we were apart when we made the decision that the 24-hour list needs to be accomplished. Both said, hey, let's do this. Okay, so there you go. I'm doing it. You can do what you want. I got a late breaking bulletin just given to me by my trusty assistant. Stand by. And this is from Mike Feeney as well. All right, valid question. What's the best way to store water long term? The best way is leave it down in the ground and then have a generator that you can turn your well on and pull it out when you need it. That's the best way. But I'm assuming that you're meaning if you're going to turn on a faucet, maybe if you live in town and you want to put up 100 gallons or, 500 gallons or something like that. The best way that I can think of is to get food grade plastic barrels. And if you don't have them yet, I mean, you might have a struggle finding them. And you fill those with water out of the tap and then put in a capful or two of bleach. All right, and that will keep the bacterial growth, that will keep any biological growth to a minimum on the inside. If your water, let's say you've stored it for 6 months and you take it out and you're going to use it and it's stinky, boil it. Okay, that's what you need to do. That's the best I can tell you. The other thing you could do tonight is go to a store and buy the cases of bottled water. It's cheap. Tonight it is, but I don't know about tomorrow. Tomorrow it might be up there, supply and demand. If there is a burp, all right, keep in mind, when I say burp, I mean an interruption in the food supply chain, all right? Keep in mind that on the shelves at the store, that's it. There's no big warehouse out back. What they're doing is the stuff comes in off semis at night or whenever, and employees are constantly stocking the shelves. And people are taking it off the shelf. And if there's a big gap, they fill it in. But occasionally you see gaps on the shelf because there's not a big storehouse in the back of food. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is now. Okay, it's called in-time supply. All right, and it's been like that for a long time. That's not anything totally new. Okay, so there you go, Feeney. All right, so I'm done with that. So let's talk about this. I got out of the Air Force in 2004, and in 2005, I went to a small farms conference in Michigan here, and I heard a speaker. It might have been 6, all right, 5 or 6. We're not exactly sure when this speaker was there. I know we went in 5, and I know we went in 6, 7, 8, and 9, but I don't know exactly when this guy was there. Now, his name is Joel Salatin, and that was my first exposure to him. He was the keynote speaker. And, I didn't know the direction that I was going to go. I was just coming out of the military. I knew I wanted to live on a farm, and I knew I wanted to have animals, but I didn't know there was a difference between industrial farming and small farms. I didn't know where the dividing line was. Okay, so, and there's definitely a dividing line. And I was fortunate to be able to hear him speak because he was able to draw that line for me so I could see which side I wanted to be on. All right. And at the time, I had gotten out of the service. I had good credit. I had an 80-acre piece of land, and there was a guy that hauls livestock locally here. And he says to me, hey, you ought to think about putting hog houses in. And like, hog houses? What are hog houses? He says, well, it's these big houses that they put a bunch of hogs in, and they have an automated system to feed them, and it'd be right up your alley because you're good with mechanical things and all that. And I said, really? Yeah, I never really thought about that. And started, and then I'd been out of the service for a little while, and I was finding out that money doesn't grow on trees out here. I thought it did, and I started thinking I gotta find something to do. And the word was that every hog house that you have, you could make 60,000 a year. And it sounded good, and we had enough room to put two of them down there, and I had good credit and all this stuff. So I contacted the company that does this. I won't use their name. And they were, yeah, we'd love to move up in your neck of the woods and put some hog houses in. And so then I went to a few towns down from us, a town called Barryton, and I actually went with a guy that was picking up hogs from a hog house complex in a semi, and I was actually driving the semi, and he was training me to drive the semi. And we picked up a semi load full of hogs, took them down to Indiana to this huge processing plant. And I will never forget it. We got down there probably 4 a.m. and had to unload these hogs. And a bunch of guys came out that were speaking a language I didn't understand. And they were really mean to the hogs, getting them out. And about 20 of those pigs didn't even get out of the trailer. They were that weak. And they just hauled them out. And they left them in kind of a pile. And I got pretty stressed out trying to back in. And I said to the guy that owned the semi, I said, I don't really think this is for me. I wanted to be more nurturing to animals and not cruel to them like that. And I didn't, it was just not for me. So about that time is when the Small Farms Conference was, and I met this guy, Joel Salatin. He had a whole bunch of books, and I was very conflicted. Like, what am I supposed to do? And my wife bought this book, not this book, but one just like this. This is a newer one. Mine is pretty well worn out. And I got to start a relationship with a man by the name of Joel Salatin through this book. He writes about his personal life, his attitude towards farming, his attitude towards animals, his attitude towards other people, towards fertility of his farm, towards his community. And it was a very holistic approach to life, not just how to farm. It was more of a holistic approach towards life. And can you believe it? Coming out of the military, I really needed to realign. The military is a highly specialized outfit, and they have a couple of functions that they do, and we do it really well. Farming is a little bit more, or a lot more forgiving, and you're dealing with living things that interact with each other, and your job is basically to be Adam and the wife is to be Eve. So even if you don't believe in that, read about that. I mean, everybody knows about Adam and Eve, and they were put in this garden, and they were supposed to take care of it, right? They were supposed to figure out how the animals get along and how they don't get along, and name them, and you sleep over here and you sleep over there. I don't know what they did, but you can kind of surmise what they did. But that's basically what you're going to do. And that's what this man outlines in his books. Now, it's not about that. This book is how to make $25,000 in 6 months on 20 acres. And I'm here to tell you that's very doable. All right. He talks about pastured poultry. And for those of you that don't know, pastured poultry is chickens that are raised outside on pasture. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but then the question is, well, how do you do it? How do you keep the chickens from getting attacked at night? How do you keep them healthy? How do you get water to them? They're in this right here is a chicken tractor. It's a frame with a little roof on it. And that bucket right there is their water supply. And you move that every day. And sometimes you might even move it twice a day because chickens will actually eat forage on the field that you have them on. So you want the grass to be about 2 inches long, between 2 and 4 inches long. And they'll eat quite a bit of it. And it will make a chicken like a White Mountain Vantress fit to eat, as Joel puts it. I got to meet him in 2014, and I ran into him at an airport, and I was going to a small farms conference out in California, and I was actually going there to be a speaker, and I wound up in the lobby, and he was in the lobby, and he didn't know me, but I knew him because I'd seen him speak before. Plus, I'd read quite a few of his books. He's got a bunch of them. I have 3 or 4 of them, and I think a lot of them. And I, went up and introduced myself, and I told him that I was at the conference here to speak, and and he's an old hand at it, and so it was kind of neat. And turns out we were both going to the same hotel, and it was about an hour and a half away. So we get to ride and talk a little bit, and I knew a lot about him, so it was kind of one of those things like riding with a celebrity. It was pretty neat. And I don't know what kind of impression I made. I really don't. And then that night we got to go to dinner, right? The guy that was the proctor of this small farms conference out in California, out there, it's a big deal. He picked us up, took us to a restaurant, bought us dinner and everything. It was really cool. So I got to talk with him over dinner. And then the next day we had the conference. And then Sunday night we went to dinner again. The whole group of speakers went to dinner. So I got to spend time with him. Pretty good. He is the real deal. You read about him in his books and you think maybe when I run into him, he's, an axe murderer, but he really isn't. He's a decent family guy. And then after that, I got to go to another conference and he was there with his wife and I got to meet her. Very nice. After that, a guy that I know from Indiana wanted to go down and see him at his farm, and we actually flew down there on his jet, right? So, and then I went down to his farm again after that with some friends of mine from the Upper Peninsula. Had a whale of a time, just whale of a time. He's got a really nice farm, and he really lives what he says he does, and I do too. So I appreciated getting to know the guy. So this is the book that you probably gonna want to find, and Jill's was gonna put it in the description so you could find it. This is where I would start. So if any of you are looking for a starting point for livestock, I say this is it. And that's where I started. I think this is a good approach to how you want to treat all your livestock. I really do. Sometimes what we say is I think my logo says pasture-based livestock. So pasture is where all of our livestock lives, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that, and Joel Salatin goes into that in the book. You want the animals to work in your favor, right? Animals are always going to have things that they do, all right? Like he says, you want your chickens to exhibit their chickenness, right? So what do chickens do? They manure, they peck, they scratch, and all those things can be a real pain, right? But when they're in a chicken tractor and you're moving it every day, you're laying down a nice layer of chicken manure. The chicken is an organism. The pasture is an organism. You know, like a coral reef is an organism. It's really a bunch of organisms, but the whole, so like the chicken is an organism, but it's really a bunch of organisms. Just like me, I'm a bunch of organisms. So you lay down this really nice layer of manure, and as you move down your pasture, all of a sudden, where the tractor was, you have this bright green, beautiful grass that comes up. That's a good thing. So, the chicken is working for you. Plus, they do a little scratching, and it aerates the soil, and there you go. You have an increase from the chicken's chickenness. And then when we start talking about pigs, well, pigs, what do? They dig, So is that a bad thing? In some people's mind, it is. Not in my mind. It's a good thing because they have the ability to forage their own food. So if I plant a field with turnips on it, you do the math on that. You're gonna get somewhere around 5 pounds of forage per square foot, and it's a 10,000 square foot field. You do the math on that. That's a lot of forage for those pigs. If I have to go out there and I have to dig it with, say, a potato fork and hand it to them, well, then I'm using a lot of my energy to help them. But if they do it for me, if they do all the harvesting for me, and they're not too particular about what they eat, like let's say one of those turnips has a split in it or a worm in it, pigs don't care. They don't care at all. Matter of fact, ooh, worm. Tony, where'd you get that? So he teaches you how to allow your animals to work in your favor. It's the same thing with cows, pigs, and I would reckon other things too that I don't grow. All right. So I would highly recommend that book. And here's another thing. I want to give a little commentary on that because I've seen, and this is me adding to Joel's, masterpiece here. But what I did on this was I tried to do it by the book. I tried to do it exactly the way he did it. And in my case, there was extenuating circumstances here that he doesn't deal with where he is. And one of the things that I did not encounter in the book was when we talked about predators. Now, maybe I missed it, but then maybe it was like 2007, and I went to the Small Farms Conference again, and his son Daniel was there, which in the book here, Daniel's a little boy. And when I ran into him at the Small Farms Conference up here in 2007, he was 30 years old. So this book goes back a ways. And I think he may be 40 by now. Yeah, probably. So I said to him, I'm having terrible problems with predation, coyotes and stuff like that. Or no, not really coyotes. I was mostly skunks, porcupines, and possums. And then raptors during the day, like red-tailed hawks, eagles recently, and then owls at night. And they were killing a lot of chickens, and it was pretty tough. I mean, especially I was just getting started, and I see these profits getting wiped out, and I got bills, and nothing's going right, and so I was pretty discouraged with it. I was gonna quit it, and he said, "You need a dog." I got a hold of him in the hallway, and I said, "Hey, what's the story with this?" And he says, "You need a dog." Dog? I got a dog. He says, "No, you need a guardian dog." And so he rattled off a few different dogs that work. One of them that he said was a Great Pyrenees, and there was several others, an Anatolian Shepherd, and I don't recall the other ones. But when I got back home, I started looking around, and I found somebody that had some Great Pyrenees puppies, and I went and I bought one. I had never paid for a dog in my entire life, and I'd had a lot of dogs. So I paid $350 for this dog, and I got her in April, and then we started putting chickens out in May. So she would have been 14 weeks old. She was still a puppy, but just her smell out there was enough. And then as time went on, she started to learn, and she would go out to the chicken tractors and really keep those chickens safe. Then I had a lucky break with a couple of customers that I had, and they said, "Gee, if you can grow some more of these chickens, we'll take them." And I said, "Like, how many more?" And he said, "As many as you can." I said, "All right, well, I got a crew here. I can start building these chicken tractors." We wound up building 30 chicken tractors and filled them. And so we were using a credit card. We were doing everything we could to max out these chicken tractors and max out our processing production and all that stuff. But we were making money. We can do up to about 20,000 here per the law at the time, which I have no licenses here anymore, so I don't do that. But I still do a lot of pastured poultry. I just don't sell them to retail stores or restaurants or anything like that, because if you do that, you have to have a license in the shop, and so that means a contract with the Department of Agriculture, and I don't want to partner with them. They're crummy to partner with. So anyway, I don't do that anymore, and I actually have 2 chicken tractors here now, right? We had problems with the Department of Ag. They ruined our business, but we came out the other side, and I do like to talk about that a lot, because that's part of having a resilient operation, is you can land on your feet no matter what happens to you. And I'll tell you, you do not want to partner with those guys, because they can make life miserable for you, and you really don't want to do it. So anyway, we tweaked the information in here, and it took me a while before I realized that he's given me a guidelines in this book, and we have to adapt it towards what we are doing specifically here. So I've made a lot of changes there, and some of the things that I've done, I started out with the waters that he uses, and then we started to see that, hey, these are not working as good as they could. And so we changed some parts on them, adapted them, made them better, and they worked better. But the problem we had was we get pretty hot here in the summertime, which he does down there too. He's in Virginia. But the swing in temperature is what the problem is here. We'll have 2 weeks where it's blistering hot, it's 95 degrees, and then it'll go back to max 80 during the day. And so that swing is what the problem is. So I had to build my chicken tractors a little bit differently than he does. He brings the sides all the way down, and I could not afford to be watering my birds twice a day. He could. It didn't work for us. They would be out of water when we went out the second time, and as soon as you put water in there, they would get soaking wet, all trying to mob the waterers. So we had to go to a different system. And I like to talk about that, and I think that I'm going to do a video on that here sometime. There's one in the archives. I don't know how good it is, but we installed a system where all the chicken tractors are hooked up to I use irrigation line, little tiny capillary tubing, and then we have waterers that hang in the tractors and they stay full all the time. So we haul no water in the summertime out to our chickens, and it's really a nice system. And first I started out with clear plastic tubes, but they would get loaded up with algae. And then we went to an opaque brown tube or black tube, and they stay nice and clean. I mean, the water's warm, but there's no algae bloom inside the tube, and so the waterers don't get plugged up and run over and stuff like that. And I've really had good luck with that. I mean, you think about it, if you have 30 chicken tractors and each one has a 5 gallon bucket of water on the top, 75 birds, and you are going through 10 gallons a day. To haul that much water out there takes a vehicle and two big plastic barrels in there that you have to load with water. So you're sitting there filling them with water, like sitting on your hands. It's a waste of time, plus vehicle, fuel. At the time, you know, people who could drive vehicles was an issue because my kids were little. So now we have a black plastic line that lays it lays at the root of the fence all over the farm. It's everywhere. And it's just for summertime use. And then from there, we'll run a hose over to where the chicken tractor complex is set up. And then it breaks down from there into the capillary tubing to service all the tractors. It's a pretty neat system, and it took a while to figure that out, but you know, we gladly share that. So I have two chicken tractors now, and that's because of the 30. I had a neighbor's calves come over here and get in the chicken tractors with my chickens and broke up a bunch of the tractors, which was a tragedy. Happened twice. And about that time, we backed down on our production because of problems that we had with the Department of Agriculture. So it worked out all right. I have two chicken tractors now. I gave a bunch of them away. But I have a new design that I am raring to go to put together, and I plan to make a video to show how that's done. Um, it's not something I've built before per se, but I've built other stuff like it. And the concern that I had was, is it going to get picked up by the wind and taken for a ride? So the design I have right now, it doesn't. It just stays right on the ground. As a matter of fact, when the wind blows over it, it squats it down. So that's good design. And primarily what I'm using on that is 1x4 pressure treated pine. It's good stuff. It's ground contact, but you're putting it together with screws, and it does loosen up after a while. And you know, the ones that I have now are 10 years old, and they're still holding together, but we have to patch them together, you know, periodically. And then the chicken wire on them goes too. It corrodes and it gives way because you're moving it. So this new design that I'm building, I'm going to be using other techniques and other materials that I think are going to last a lot longer, be lighter, and the whole assembly be more durable and easier to assemble too. I mean, I'm looking for ease. The ones we built out of wood, we had $140 in materials into them, and probably with about 3 guys building them, you'd have about 3 hours into them to build them. So yeah, and you gotta put screws in all of them. You can't use a nail gun. We tried that, and it doesn't work. So yeah, pastured poultry is a good place to go. But then another thing that you're going to need to know about is processing your chickens, which opens up a whole opportunity for somebody. One of the guys that we are working with, he's out in Maine, Joe Brown, you probably hear. And when I went out to see him, he was kind of a can-do type guy. He says, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, well, if you can do it, if you can stomach it, right, you're going to want to set up a chicken processing plant here. Plant doesn't need to be a plant. When you think plant, you're thinking it's a big place. It's actually not, doesn't have to be big. My chicken processing area is not that big. But if you can do that, if you're willing to do that, okay, I got a question here I'll get to in a minute. If you're willing to do that, you can build a market around you. All right. There's a lot of people that want to raise chickens, but are they willing to process their chickens? See, that's what separates a successful farmer from an unsuccessful farmer, or a successful farmer from a less successful farmer. Is the successful farmer is willing to do what the less successful guy is willing to do. I know people that want to do this, but they're like, oh no, I'm not doing that. Okay, well, how do you talk them out of that? Well, you should want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm done talking to you then. But this guy was like, yeah, I could do that. He says, what do I need? I ran down the list of things for him. He's got his shop built now, and I just went to see him last April. He's got his shop built now. I don't know how far along it is, but thank you, Miss Shapley. Very goal-orientated guy. And what that does on the farmstead or the small farm or the homestead, whatever, it gives you the ability to be home and then have a supply of dollars coming in. Now, I am not telling you that, butchering chickens, you can make a living. I am not telling you that. I am saying it is a facet of what you can do. Now, if you're going to do pastured poultry, I'm telling you, you can sell them. But if you're going to take them to somebody else to be processed, you're going to pay about $4 per bird to have them processed. So if you grow 1,000 of them in the summer, there's $4,000 going out the door. So you're paying somebody else to do it where you could be doing it and paying yourself. And there's more than just the $4 that goes out. You have to take the birds there, so they have to be in something. That's a challenge, right? You can't just tell the birds, hey, hop in the truck. It's a challenge. There's a lot to know about that. And then you've got to bring them home. So, and then get them to the customer. So if you have your own plant at home, I know it sounds like a lot. I'm not talking about building a great big stainless steel cement and all that stuff. No, you can actually, if you do this right, you can actually do this without any of the bells and whistles. Like, you don't even need a roof. You don't need windows. You don't even need walls to do this. You can actually do it wherever. I mean, people have put together trailers that have all the equipment on it, has a scalding tank, has a plucker, and has tables and all this stuff. And they share the trailer. So, I mean, you definitely it doesn't have to be in a building. If I was ever to set up another one, I think I would just set up a pavilion, and that's basically what I had when I started. Actually, no, when I started, we had an old foundation out there. It was the old chicken house. This farm is pretty old, like 1900, that they probably built that chicken house. And the chicken house is long gone, and a lot of the rubble is over in the swamp. All right, and I know it's the rubble from that because it's consistent with the rubble that's here. And anyway, that's not important. But the old foundation was there, and when we moved here, we were in there. We were on that foundation because it was a flat spot, and we had a hose over there, and we had a chicken plucker that I bought from an Amish guy up north of me. Didn't have a motor on it. I didn't even know how it worked, but the guy assured me that it did work. And Amish people don't lie, right? So I got it home, put a motor on it that I had scrounged, and sure enough, it worked. And we were processing our first load of chickens, and somebody pulled in that happened to be the veterinarian from around here, and she said, "Ooh, you guys process chickens?" We said, I guess we do. Look at us. We're processing chickens. Because before that, we just did them by hand. And she said, "Oh, would you like to do the youth show chickens?" I said, what's the youth show? I didn't even know what that was. But so that first year we wound up doing chickens. And I think we charged $1 a chicken to do them because I had no concept of of the amount of work that went into it. And then the next year we did them again, and we've done them ever since. So it is a profitable business. So now with me and the 3 little kids and Jill, we can knock out 200 of them if we start at 8 o'clock sharp. We can knock out 200 of them by lunch. Now lunch might be 12, but it might be 1. And when I say knock them out, they're all dead and in the water, plucked and in the water, cooling. And then after lunch, we're moving to the inner shop with the air conditioner on, and we're putting them in bags and shrink wrapping them and all that stuff. Some of them we shrink wrap, some of them we don't, and then we put a label on them and they go in our cooler, and then people have to pick them up that day. Now that is our custom processing day for people in the community here, and some of them are from pretty far away that come. And again, there's no licensing required for that. We're doing a service for somebody, just like if I had a toenail painting shop here and I wanted to paint my neighbor's wife's toenails. It's between me and him and her probably, but there's no licensing required. I'm just providing a service. Now the people that own those chickens, they can take those chickens from here and they can do what they want with them. But if they try to take them to a store and sell them, the store is going to say, no, I got to have a state inspection on this. And we don't have that. So don't take your chickens there to sell them. If you take them to a restaurant, same thing. Even in Michigan, if you take them to a farmer's market, they'll say, oh, no state inspection on that. Now the state inspection, you would think, oh, there must be a guy there that's making sure everything's being done right. You'd be wrong. No, you send a check in, they send you a little piece of paper. It's a permission slip. And on that permission slip, there's a number on there that you're supposed to put on your label. So it's a scam. It's basically a scam. I'd feel a little bit better if it was some Italian named Guido that was saying, you're going to do it my way. I'd feel better about it. But so anyway, we don't do that, and you don't need to do it either. But those chickens would not be able to go into those 3 places. But you don't want to use those 3 places anyway, because if you sell to a restaurant, they got to make a bite on it too. So you got to sell it to them wholesale instead of retail. Wholesale would be, 20 to 30% less than the selling, the end user price. You don't want to do that. Plus a restaurant is looking at your pastured poultry, even though it's outstanding and great. They can get chicken from, food service for about 50% less or more, So that's a problem. And, I know a lot of restaurants like, yeah, but we like to buy local and all that stuff. Yeah, but are your customers willing to pay, that price point? Some do. We had a lot of customers in Traverse City that paid for a long time and they loved it. And when we were no longer able to do it anymore, there was quite a vacuum. But hey, that's the way it goes. Now, we still sell a lot of chickens, but we sell them directly to our own customer base of people. So we have a database of people who have said, well, I want chicken just for my house. And I call them our moms because mothers are really particular about what they feed their children. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them don't care what the kids eat, but the ones that do are very particular. And so you, as the farmer, using the techniques in this book, become a rock star to those moms. Good or bad? Good, because they will stick up for you if something happens. You've got, there's nothing more ferocious than a mother bear. Um, Dads are not really like that, and I hate to, put them all in a box or anything, or stereotype them, but it's moms that are the ferocious food people for their kids, and I appreciate that about them. And they think you're a rock star, and you're providing something for their family that is good and wholesome. The chicken from the store, is that good and wholesome? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Like, anymore, they don't even have to write anything on the label. They don't have to tell you where it's from. So it can be coming from, who knows, Shanghai, China, where it might have the hantavirus or something. Who knows? But if moms are coming right to my farm, coming up the driveway, they know what they're getting, and that's important to them. Okay, when you're feeding your kids, you're giving them every advantage you can. Same thing with beef. Same thing with pork. Now, so there you go. Processing is a great opportunity for people. It is a source of income. Like I said, if we do 200 of them before lunch, we charge $4 per bird. So in one day, we're making a sizable chunk of dollars. Now, that doesn't happen every week. Some weeks we might have 30 birds. Some weeks we might have 300 birds. And in the fall, we do a lot of turkeys. And that can be sort of like wrestling a deer sometimes. You have to be prepared to do that, because turkeys they grow big. They'll go 50 pounds. And so knocking them off is a challenge. And all of this, there is the way to do it. And there's the way you think it ought to be done, and then the way you really do it. And that's where training comes in. We've taught hundreds of people how to process poultry. They come and work with us for the day, and they got it. They got it, or they got enough. So let's see if I've covered everything. There was a question, do we bring the birds in at night? The answer is no. The discipline goes like this. See, I've tweaked it some for my operation. At Joel's place, he has a building that is his brooder. And a brooder is a very controlled climate space that you can keep warm, really warm, like 100 degrees is where you want to start off. And so he has it all plumbed in with propane, and then they have these heaters that hang down in there. I use them too. They call them hover heaters. They're a poultry heater, and they hang, and you can put them close down when you need more heat, or you can put them up higher. They have a thermostat on them that will turn off when you get to the prescribed temperature. And brooding chickens go something like this. You order your chickens, they come in the mail. Okay. We use an outfit here in Michigan, and you're going to want to use the one that's closest to you. I mean, that does a reasonable job. And you'll have to ask around. If you're going to be in Michigan or any of the states close down by the southern part of Michigan, I would recommend using Town Line Hatchery. You can find them online. So you order your chickens. They come in cardboard boxes that are made specifically for poultry. They've been doing this a long time. The boxes are specially made so they can punch out holes, if it's a hot day, or if it's cold, they leave them intact. And the post office, they're professionals, and they know how to handle chickens. and they call you on the phone, or if you wait, they'll bring them to your house. But I prefer to get them as soon as I can. So they call me. We have like a system. We've been doing this so long. They'll call me on a Tuesday morning. I hear the phone ring on a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. I know it's the post office. I go down there, I pick them up, I bring them up. I have a different setup than Joel does. Joel has his building with the hovers in it on a concrete floor, and he puts down a lot of uh, dry sawdust, and he'll leave those chickens in there from between a week and I think 3 weeks is his max. I like that system, and I did that system for a while. I had two different brooders here. The first one was small. I had to upgrade to a bigger one, and then the bigger one is now my office. And I upgraded from there to a building. I got the bright idea to not have a floor in the building. All right. So I will actually bed that building. The floor area on that building is 10 by 12. There's a door in the front. It's insulated, but it's sitting on skids. I have a skylight in the roof. I have a little shelf on the side where I can put a bottle of propane, a 100-pound bottle of propane, and then I have a hover hanging inside of it. So to set up the day that the chicks are supposed to come, we'll go out there and we'll put sawdust on the floor or on the ground, right? I'll put it out there about that thick. I can get bales of dry sawdust around here for less than $4, and I use about a half a bale, right? And then the other bale I'll just leave in there, or the other half of the bale I'll just leave in there so that I have some spare stuff to use. All right, then we turn the hover on. The ground heats up, the walls heat up, and it gets warm in there. I bring it up to about 100 degrees. And then we bring the chickens home, the chicks home. We bring them all in there, shut the door, and this is what I let the kids do this because they really like it. We open up the boxes and take all the chicks out. All right. And we have waters in there for them. They say that you're supposed to dip the chick's beak in there. We haven't done that in a long time. So I would say they say a lot of things, but I would disagree with that. We've raised literally hundreds of thousands of chickens on this farm, and we have never or almost never done that. Probably at the very first we did it, like the first year when we were going to raise like 50 birds, But in that chicken house, I put 500 at a time, and we brood them for between 1 and 4 weeks. So I can start earlier with that house and I can go much later. If it's July when I'm starting and it's 75 at night and 95 during the day, the chicks only have to stay in there for about a week, and then they're ready to go. They can get at the waterers. We can put them in the chicken tractors. It's mild at night, and they kind of harden off. They do better the sooner you put them out, to a point. If you put them out and they get chilled off and wet, they're not going to do so good. So the farmer really has to gauge that. But where I'm at right now, I do far less. Last summer we probably did 600 or 800 of them, and it was really spaced out, and we were doing them in batches of probably 250, which for the way we're set up is not too difficult. It's actually low stress, very low stress. But every one of those birds is getting sold retail. When we sell them to our end user, we're selling them at a retail price. And there's no sense in doing this if you're not going to make money. And they don't give chicken feed away. I'll tell you that right now. Good chicken feed, they don't give it away. It's 20 cents a pound, 25 cents a pound sometimes. So you go through a lot of it. If you get into this, there's good information out there about the conversion rate on chickens, a feed, so you can have some idea of what you're going to need as far as chicken feed goes. And then you want to get smart about that. You don't want to buy it in bags because there's a cost associated with the bagging. So you're going to want to get it in bulk, and you got to figure out how you're going to do that. There's a bunch of different ways. I have a bin here. So the fellas I get it from, they bring it with a truck and they'll bring it 6 tons at a time. And you want to use up everything you get in the course of a summer. You don't want to be keeping it over the winter because the feed, once it's ground, it loses its nutrient value, just drains out of it. And we talked about that a little bit last night. So anyway, I might be going a little deep on this, but I think if you are interested in getting into this, these are the 2 books I'm going to show you today. If you were to get this is a real easy read. And maybe the next thing that you'd want to do is take a look at this book here. There is one other that I might recommend before this one if you are not going to be getting into beef right away, because that is a little bit, there's a learning curve there. They're big animals and you got to have some equipment. I plan to talk about beef next, or maybe even pigs next, a little bit more in depth, like I just went into on the chickens. And I'm just hitting the mountaintops on this. Our plan is, okay, I was telling you the umbrella is bakersgreenacres.com. That is the website. My wife's blog is there, and there's a history there from 2004. And what I want to do is I want to utilize my daughter to be my camera person and do an in-depth show and tell on how to build a chicken tractor. And then we can take that video, put it on the bakersgreenacres.com site, and there'll be it'll be a PDF, and there'll be a cost associated with it. And if you want it, boop, you click on it and download it, and you can watch it as many times as you want, how to build a chicken tractor. Now, there's a lot of different ways to build a chicken tractor, but if you don't know what you want to do and you want to have some place to start, it might be helpful to some people. Well, some other guys I know, like me, I just went for it. Of course, I built a lot of different chicken tractors that are long gone, that didn't work. So I don't know. So that's kind of one of the plans that we hope to do. That I think on there right now, there is a fencing video, and we want to do a chicken processing video. We want to do a pig processing video, but that'll be in like 3 parts. And again, this is the way we do it, our flavor to it. Okay, I got another question, and I can answer that in a minute. So that's coming. That's coming, and it's another way to pass on information. But see, the beauty of that is once that video is made and it's saved someplace, 20 years from now, somebody can be buying that video. This book, he wrote this a long time ago, and you can still buy this brand new. I recommend you do it. You can go on it's just a good read. It's a good place to start to understand where this guy's coming from. I definitely wouldn't be where I am right now in farming if it hadn't been for that guy. And the last time I saw him was at the Rogue Food Conference a month and a half ago. And I had a completely different level of thank you than I did when I first met him. I was a little bit more comfortable around him, and I said, he's easy to be comfortable around. He's just a regular guy. But I said, thank you. Thanks for everything. Really appreciate it. I mean, for everything. I think he knew what I meant too, for some reason. Okay. I got some questions here. Miss Shapley just brought in. Do you move them? Okay. Do you move them to a coop at night? Okay. Another question like that. No, you don't. Once they're in the chicken tractors, uh, the average is about 3 weeks in the brooder, and then we move them to the chicken tractors. When we move them to the chicken tractors, of course, we pick a nice day with low wind because they're not used to that. No rain. We want it as nice of a day as possible. If we have a rainy, windy day, forget it. We'll just leave them in the brooder, unless we have other chicks coming, right? And then we need the brooder freed up. And the nice thing about no floor in the brooder is I can draw the brooder forward a couple of lengths, and all of the bedding and everything is left behind. And it's just out there on the field. Now we can run over that with our loader and scoop some of it up. Sometimes I do because it's really nice to get a compost pile going with that. It's super hot stuff. About 3 weeks worth of manure and bedding is about that thick. And I've got it down to the point with my loader is I can put it down and I can just skim that off the top. And then I can see grass poking through it. And you would be surprised. You'd think that that much manure would kill the grass. It doesn't. The grass in that spot will be bright green. And there's video proof of that. I show that a lot in the fall when everything else is brown. Behind the chicken tractors is bright green. Really cool. Let's see. So about 3 weeks, and then we're putting them out, and then they're out between 8 and 10 weeks. Depends how big you want them. Usually at about 8 weeks, some of them really need to come out because they're big. We want them at about 6.5 pounds, and they'll dress at about 5. And that's kind of what people like. Right in that neighborhood. That's a normal, when you think chicken, that's what a chicken looks like. For my family, I got a big family, so we like them to get bigger. And my experience with eating animals is when they're a little older, the flavor profile on them changes. If you go a lot older on them, then you can go the other way. Hopefully we'll bring that up again when we're talking about pigs, and when we're talking about beef. I have some strong thoughts on that because having a butcher shop and having a lot of times when you're in the farming business, the chickens that make it to our table are the ones that we wouldn't sell. So why would that be? Oh, well, they have a bruise, or they have a broken leg going through the chicken plucker, or they had a broken wing. Sometimes when they're little, they break their wing, and then it's just deformed and stuff, and you don't want to eat that, so that wing just comes right off. So now you have a single wing bird. You can't very well sell that to one of your moms. You have to, that comes to my house. So a lot of times with our sows that are, we would call them, say, a worn out sow. Let's say she's 4 years old and she's kind of big and she's getting kind of lackadaisical about her duties. Then we'll say, okay, well, it's just time for her to go to be called out, and we will process her. And you would think that a 4-year-old sow that's 600 pounds, oh, she'd be tough. Not so. Okay, I didn't catch that. Mark, can you repeat the thing about milled feeds? All right, just a second. So you would think that a sow that's old like that would be tough and things like that. That's not true at all. They don't get tough. They just don't. I don't think toughness relates to age at all. I really don't. A boar, that's different, but he's full of testosterone. I mean, you can knock on the side of him. He's got plates on the side of him. And that would be tough if you could possibly eat that. We'll bring that up when we start talking about pigs. All right, chickens in the tractor 100% of the time. The answer is yes. All right, if they're not in the brooder, they're in the chicken tractor. Something about chicken tractors. Okay, in the book, Joel explains 12 by 10. So 12 long, 10 wide, 120 square feet. And the number that they have found over the years that goes in there the best is 75 birds plus or minus 10. Maybe the plus or minus 10 is me, but I know we originally through the book were told 120 square feet, 75 birds. Now, if you, let's say you have a run of birds that you're putting in, and then you've put 75, 75, 75, and then, gee, we only got 30 here. What happens when you put 30 in by themselves? They, especially if they're on the outside. Okay, so let's say you have 10 chicken tractors and you're moving in one direction, and the one that's on the outside, right? And there's say 30 in there instead of 75. Those chickens will have a tendency to crowd to one side where the next chicken tractor is, because they don't like that open space out there. That's the unknown. They don't like that. They'll have a tendency to crowd around the feeder and the water. And that's not good, because if they don't move away from the water, the next guy can't get in and get something to drink. So the 75 seems to be good because they feel safe, and then they'll be out at the perimeter of this chicken tractor. Let's say you put 100 in. They look a little tight when there's 100 in there, and they are a little tight. And so what will happen is they will start to peck each other. They won't be getting along, so they'll start pecking each other, and that happens, and that's a huge problem, because as soon as the chicken sees a little bit of blood on another chicken, that red, they go for it, and it gets ugly, and the chicken just stands. I don't think they can feel anything. They just stand there and they take it, and then before you know it, they have parts of around their butthole is usually where it gets pecked, and that can actually just drop out. So the person that's taking care of the chickens has to go out twice a day to feed, right? And that's intentional. And we could put out enough feed in one feeder for sure. But you're out there in the morning and you feed. You make sure the water is coming and everything's fine. A lot can happen between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon, or 4 in the afternoon. A lot. And then if you didn't catch it at 4 in the afternoon, then you don't see it again till 8. So let's say water was plugged for some reason, or it popped off or something, which doesn't happen a lot, but let's say it did. They would go all that time, 12 full hours without any water. Very bad thing. And I speak from experience on that. Yeah. Same thing with feed. If they go without feed, then they start getting worried. They start looking for something. They'll start eating the manure off the ground. If they eat manure, they get sick. So there you go. There's all kinds of things along the way that you're going to encounter on this, and this is where the tribe comes in very handy, because if you're new and you haven't done this, and all of a sudden you have coccidia come up, you don't need to come to me. You can just go to the tribe, because there's enough people that have done it and will know what to do, what your options are when coccidiosis takes hold of you, and or your chickens are losing weight and they're wheezing. What is that? Or they're losing weight and their heads are kind of purple. What is that? Or they keep rocking back on their feet and they tip over backwards. What is that? There's all kinds of little things that happen. And we've been doing it long enough that every time we have something happen, okay, this is the fix for this. This is what you do. You do it, and you're okay. And then to prevent those things from happening, what do? All right, there's things all along the way to do that, and they're not secrets. They're not trade secrets or anything like that. It's something that we readily pass along so people don't get discouraged and quit. And there again, the tribe, that's what that's for, and people will share stuff. Okay, so I had a question. I had two questions. Talk about the feed that comes from the mill. Um, like we talked about yesterday with the sprouts, okay, there is a life force in that sprout. Or if I pulled a turnip up out of the ground, there's a life force in that. If I cut the top off that turnip and I send it to Brazil, and it takes 4 days to get there, a lot of the life force has drained out of it. Right? If that makes sense. Same thing with the top. As soon as you cut it off, the life force starts to drain out of it. It's the same thing with chicken feed, because chicken feed generally is corn and soy, right? Soy is a legume. It's sort of like a peanut, right? It grows in like low bushes. And I've never grown soy actually, and I've never actually seen it out in the field. I've seen soy fields, but I'm not actually sure if it isn't like a peanut and it grows kind of on the ground level. I'm not really sure. But we don't use it because it's genetically modified, and it's genetically modified so that the guys that grow it can spray Roundup on it and it won't kill it, right? And then it's the Roundup that we don't like. The Roundup has deleterious effects on us and our chickens and our pigs. So we don't like to use soy, right? Do what you want. You can feed them whatever you want, but we don't like using soy. So we have a guy that will grind up open pollinated corn, so it's not genetically modified corn, so it has no Roundup on it. And then instead of soy, he's using a field pea that are not genetically modified. So our feed is a little different, but it's got the protein that it needs, and it is, it's what we want. I mean, we pay a little bit more for it, but if it's what we're going to be eating and feeding to our kids, I'm willing to do it. And he runs it here. He's got a truck that he brings it. Now, when that corn kernel is broken, the life force starts to drain out of it. So, like, I'll buy 6 tons of feed at a time, but I go through it relatively quickly. But keeping it from last year to this year, I really don't want to do that. So right now we had some left over because we finished up our broilers last year, and then we fed turkeys out, and then we still had some left over, and so we're just feeding it to our layers now. The layers, they're not in laying mode right now. We'll get a couple eggs a day, but there's 50 of them out there, and we're just getting a couple eggs. They don't like to lay in the wintertime, and that's a whole nother subject. But I'm basically just maintaining their lives right now with that feed. And if it's not the greatest nutritionally, I'm not really worried about it because they're not laying anyway. So they're getting more than they need. But yeah, that's something to consider. When you buy bagged feed at the store, it could be from the year before or even further. You want to try and get the freshest feed you can. And the way to do that is you go directly to the mill. And you look at the product that they have, and if you're willing to buy that, and I think you definitely have a right to ask: is this year's corn? Is this year's field peas? This year's soy? You have the right to ask that. And if they don't know, I mean, they should. They should know. Chaga tea, by the way. That was a pig question. I'm going to get into that tomorrow, Jonathan. I'm on chickens tonight, and I just had another question, and did I forget it already? Okay. Um, this question came in, and it's just being transferred to me, I believe. And it's, are you feeding chickens in the tractor charcoal also? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Um, we You'll hear me talk about this. I mean, I am a firm believer in biochar, and biochar is basically charcoal that's made in an oxygen depleted environment. And it might sound kind of technical. And there are machines that do it that you can buy. I built one, and I make a lot of biochar. All right. I have a mill here that I can buy cutoffs. They make pallets so I can get truckloads of wood. And actually, I have a bunch of it over there in the corner. See that wood? I actually use it. I get several truckloads a year, and because I have a big truck, and I have a place I can dump it, and it's on concrete. We actually made it just for that wood, and we make a lot of biochar out of it. Plus, I heat the house with it, so I heat the house for just very little. Um, and biochar is, I feel a story coming on. Okay, biochar is the fix for coccidiosis. Okay, coccidiosis, if you're going to do pastured poultry, depending on where you live, can be a showstopper. Coccidia, if you look it up, is a protozoa. And around here, it's in the soil. It's everywhere. I've seen journals down at the library in town, journals from the 1800s talking about coccidiosis. It was bad because people have been raising chickens for a long time, right? And what happens is the protozoa is sort of like the shark, and the bacteria is the feeder fish. So the protozoa is eating bacteria all the time, and then its manure is actually soil. All right. So when you have protozoa that gets in these little chickens, and it goes through all the bacteria in their gut, then it starts to go after the chicken. It starts to go after the chicken. It starts to eat them from the inside. It burrows into the walls of the chick, and it will actually start to reproduce in the walls. And you will know this is happening because you've got a lack of bacteria in the chicken's gut. So the chicken starts to pass food that's undigested, and then it starts to get a little bit orange, and then it gets oranger and oranger, and then it starts getting red. You go too far with it, and the chicken's so damaged that no matter what you do, you can't bring them back. And that is called coccidiosis. So when you see this happening, the fix that they found is this compound known as amprolium. It's a drug, and they sell it by the gallon. And the gallon, last time I bought it, it was like $50. It's not cheap. And you put a little in their drinking water, and it will knock it out of them. However, you're supposed to wait 2 weeks before you process that animal because there's something in there that you don't want in you. So the real big letters on the bottle, 2 week hold time before processing. So if you've got birds that, let's say, are 8 weeks old, and then you have to treat them, you're going to have to feed them for a couple more weeks before you can process them, and then hope that that it's safe. Now, if the amprolium is killing protozoa in the chicken, is that a problem for, is there something in you that amprolium will kill? Evidently there is, and that's why they tell you to hold it for 2 weeks. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to use that. I don't want to do that if I can get around it. But for a lot of years, we couldn't get around it. It was bad, and it doesn't get better. It just gets worse as the season goes on. What we wound up doing was getting drippers that we could put into the water. They call them dosatrons, and you'd set it out there, and it would dose the the water that was going to the automatic waterers. And it got complex because, these chickens are leaving next week, so we can't dose them. And so that we'd have to have it on a separate branch. And it got complex. It wasn't good. Then what happened is I read an article in Mother Earth News about biochar, and pretty good article. I tried it, did it in the garden. I mean, you don't see anything happen right away. The idea is you burn wood and you damp the fire down so it makes charcoal, and then you spread that out in your garden. It's supposed to enhance your soil's ability to protect the bacteria that's in it. Makes sense. Then a guy that I know said, "Hey, this you got to look at this." And I said, "Yeah, I already looked at that." And he says, "No, no, this is big. If you can make this stuff, you can name your price on it." He was real hot on it. And he says, "If you build it, I'll finance the whole thing." So I came up with an idea of how to build it, and I started building that, and it was going to be costly. And then when we tried it, it didn't really work. So there was a design that was out there, and it's called the 5030. 5030 biochar maker, and you can find it online. Go ahead and build one, make your own. It's a 50-gallon barrel and a 30-gallon barrel. The 30-gallon barrel goes inside of it. That's where the wood stock is, and then you put kindling wood around it, and you have a stack on it. You'll have to research that. So I built one of those, and sure enough, it worked. And we had this nice pile of biochar. It's really cool stuff. If you had a 2x4 and you biocharred it, it would be about the same size, but it takes all of the distillates out of it, so it's really light, right? But it's about the same size. Might be a little twisted. I'll show you some one of these days. And you can break it up, and then you can put it in soil. Well, here's the story, and this is a great story. I first experimented with making biochar it must have been April, okay, because we had chicks. This is when we were going hot and heavy, and we were starting chicks as early as we could. This is in between the brooder that was inside the barn and the brooder outside on the field with no floor in it, where I am now. And we were doing brooders in our clear span building. And what we would do is we used a porta hut. It's a hut, and we insulated it. And then we put a chicken tractor in front of that we modified, so they had a run that they could come out. Now the clear span is a clear span building. There's no rafters in it or anything. I mean, there's no posts or anything. So we would have 3 of them in there, and each one of them had probably 250 chickens in them, chicks. And we'd start them in there, and then we'd move them out onto the field. So we had made this biochar, and my second 2 sons were out there with me helping. And I remember it was night, and we had the lights on in there, and we were running the biochar maker outside, and it was totally an experiment. And we got done with it, took it out, and then we have all this nice biochar. I took a piece of it, and I chucked it in with the chickens just for fun. And they were probably 2 weeks old, 2-3 weeks old maybe. I chucked it in there with them, and they grab it and they run around with it. And but they'll do that with anything, they'll do that with anything that you throw in there. But this was different. They were running around with it, and then when another one would grab it and pull it away from them, the other one would stand there and chomp on what he had pulled off, and they were eating it. And at first I thought, well, I don't know if I should do this. But then I went back in time to when I was stationed in Japan, and the rumor around, I worked nights there, and there was this great big stack that you could see, and there was smoke coming out of it, and all the GIs would say, yeah, that's where they put all the dead bodies. They burn them. And then they use that as fertilizer on the vegetables. That was the story that was going around. And all of a sudden it clicked. Maybe they are making biochar out of dead bodies. But the story started someplace. So I thought, okay, we're throwing this biochar into the chickens and they're eating it. So we threw a bunch in, and it was just one of the stations, and just observed, and I don't think we thought much of it. I sure didn't. But then a couple of weeks later, we were moving them out into chicken tractors on the field. And I remember it was my son Joe that said, hey, why are these ones so much bigger? And then I think I checked around, and now we got them all at the same time. I wonder why they're that much bigger. And then when we sweeping up the floor in there, you could see, hey, charcoal was in here. There was definitely charcoal in here, and I got to thinking about that. So when we had them out on the field, it's a perfect environment to run tests, and we did. And the ones that got the biochar grew a lot faster. We definitely didn't have to treat them for coccidiosis. And I started to think, hey, we might be onto something here. So here's where the story gets kind of juicy. I'm going to leave names out of this, right? These guys probably are still alive. At the time, I had 30 chicken tractors going, and I was kind of a hero with the extension service because I was pulling this off. And the university people came up here to see this. I was the biggest pastured poultry producers in the state. And I was getting it done. It was working. We were making money. I had people to work. It was going good. So the guy who was the head poultry guy, the head poultry guy at the university, ponytail and Birkenstocks and everything, he had given me his phone number one time. He says, hey, if you have a problem, you call me. And I had called him several times about my coccidiosis problem. And he says, oh, you're going to want to buy some Corid. And he was the one, I think, that set me up with the dosatron and how to use it and everything, which was cool. Nice guy. But I thought the biochar was the key to it, because when we fed them biochar, they didn't require any amprolium, any Corid. The brand name for amprolium is Corid. And so I called this guy up and I says, hold on to your hat. I think I found the fix for coccidiosis. And I said to him, have you ever heard of biochar? And he's like, yeah. And I could tell from his demeanor that he wasn't interested in what I was going to tell him before I even said it. And I told him what I did. I told him how I ran the tests, everything. And I said, it works. No coccidiosis. You realize what this could mean for the poultry industry if you don't have to add Corid to your feed or your water. It's pretty expensive. And he says to me, well, make sure you have a backup plan. I'll see you later. Bye. I was stunned. And that was long before I had had any problems with the state or any deception coming out of the university or anything like that. I was stunned because I came out of a world in the military where if something wasn't working right and you got the fix on it, you could actually put a suggestion in it. And I knew people that made big money, by fixing things. But out here in this world, it's not like that. If biochar became a thing, then Corid would become a non-thing. And the people who produce Corid, I don't even know who they are, would probably have to give up one of their summer homes. So the fix is not what they really want to hear. So that's a great story, and that's not the only time that's ever happened. So anyway, we make biochar. We take it a step further than that, and we inoculate it. So that means we're making like a bacterial tea out of, you take compost and you make a tea out of it, and then you put that tea, sort of like this chaga tea. Maybe I should probably put chaga tea on it. And then we grind that into a fine powder, and that just goes right into their feed. So when the feed's coming out of the bin, we're putting biochar in it, and we feed it, and it's preventative maintenance. If we don't do it, you'll see coccidiosis pop right up, and then we give it to them, and it goes away. The most problems that we've had is we were having a problem grinding it fine enough that they would eat it. And now I have a small feed grinder that the kids can just drop pieces through, and they're more than happy to sit there and just drop pieces through and fill Ziploc bags with it. So we make a lot of it, and I recommend that you do that. And I will probably make a video on how to make biochar too. See, the biochar goes into the chicken. It's full of bacteria, and so the protozoa has ample opportunity to eat its fill of the bacteria that we've inoculated the char with. And then the chicken will manure that out. The char that's in their manure is getting loaded with the bacteria from the gut of the chicken, and then that goes onto the field. So the bacteria is protected within the char, and it's on the field, and the little bacteria have a little more bacteria, so you have a high concentration of bacteria on your field. And then you want the high concentration of protozoa, because the protozoa eat the bacteria, and becomes manure from the protozoa, which becomes soil. So you're building your soil through through that technique, and it works really, really slick. Okay, I got a couple more questions, and then we're going long here. I wasn't supposed to do this. Do I compost with chickens? I don't, but I'm gonna. My buddy Randy does that, and what he does is he has a compost pile right in his chickens. He puts it in the middle of the pen, and it's not complete compost, so there's a lot of stuff in there for the chickens to get, and they're constantly digging it and pecking it. And there are guys that raise their chickens on compost, and that's something that I have to continue to do, and experiment with. But it seems really cool to me to be able to I make a lot of compost, but to take a lot of it and put it in with my chickens so that they can process it seems like it'd be a really cool thing to do, and it's on my list. Do you supplement your pig's protein on top of the bread? All right, well, I wasn't going to answer this, but I do, and I raise Mangalitsa pigs. They're a heritage breed, so they're not the white pigs, the hybridized pigs that are hybridized for the sole purpose of pork production in what they call CAFOs. CAFO being concentrated animal feeding operations. They are not those pigs. They're a heritage breed. They grow slower, and they have characteristics of the old world pig. They can eat things that the new world pig isn't interested in, would just turn its nose up at. And when we first got them, we got them as a kind of a specialty type deal, for high-end restaurants and stuff. And I'm not really into that anymore. I'm into more of the people that are the low-end people, I'm just not into that high-end restaurant thing anymore. And plus I don't have any licenses anymore, so it's not for me. But that pig is the ultimate homestead pig. And here's why. Okay, we talked a little about prepping at the beginning of this show. Um, a term that I heard the other day was prep steading. All right, so you run in a homestead, and it's for the sole purpose of preparing for the zombie apocalypse. All right, prep steading. Sounds good. I guess I do that. I'm a prepper, but I don't know. So if you're prep steading, I would think that you'd want to have species of animals on your farmstead that are very resilient. Our chickens, laying chickens are, and if you use laying chickens properly, a laying chicken is really your cleanup crew. Um, if you're going and buying, $15 bags of organic chicken feed for them, those eggs are going to be pretty valuable. And I don't know if they're going to be any better. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, obviously, if you give them a really high-end feed, you can't not have a good chicken egg. It would have to be better. But the scraps from our table, right, the stuff that go in we call it the pig bucket, that's pretty good stuff. And that goes to the chickens. And you can almost feed the chickens exclusively on that. They don't have to have the really high-end stuff, and they'll still make a pretty good egg. And I'm not in the egg business anyway. We do eggs for our house. So a chicken is a pretty good prepper type species because they can eat a lot of the things that you can't eat, and then they'll give you eggs, and you can actually, a laying chicken will make a good stew chicken. Actually, the best stew chickens. So yeah, but the ultimate prepping animal is definitely the pig. And if you get pigs that won't eat certain stuff, then they're less good than pigs like a Mangalitsa that will eat everything. I mean, they will eat. There's very few things they won't eat. I see some banana peels out there, but I think it's because they just overlook it and then better stuff comes. But I think they would eat those. They eat coffee grounds. They eat tea bags. I'm listing off the grosser things. Of course, they're going to eat, bread that we give them. So the question was, do I supplement my pig's protein? All right, because a pig is an omnivore, so obviously they need protein. But what gets put out there, information about feeding pigs, is probably the information that if you're a student of industrial agriculture and your goal is to get that pig from 0 pounds to 280 pounds in the least amount of hours, and I'm not kidding, the pig's going to be picked up to go to slaughter in the afternoon or in the morning. It means something because if you've got 3,000 pigs in there and, they're half a pound heavier, that's a lot of poundage. So they're very particular about that. They bring it down to a science, an exact science. That's not for me. I mean, I told you I don't want to be involved with that, but that's just not for me. But with my Mangalitsas, they will eat just about anything. Are they going to make serious gains when I throw a bale of hay in there? No, but I'm a homestead, so I'm taking pigs off the field when I need meat for my family, and usually I'll take a group of them off at a time when they're ready, and some of them goes to my friends and associates, and however we distribute it out. But time is not as critical for me as it would be for somebody who has a hog house where they've got to be out on this day. They have, one day to clean the place, and then the next load of pigs is coming in, the day after that, because their schedule, time is money, and they're all about money, So Yeah, do I feed them protein? I do. And this is how it works around here. So in the wintertime, I have a junk bread contract and I have enough bread that I can feed my pigs nothing but bread. The protein content on the bread, somebody tested it one time and said it was X amount, maybe 15%, 12%, something like that. Okay, so that's not where it needs to be because they'll tell you that the pig's got to have 19%, whatever, in some books. So, in the wintertime, I'll throw them hay. Now, is it my first cutting hay or my second cutting hay? Because they vary. And if I did take a third cutting, that's even higher in protein. Or if I found somebody that does a third cutting, that's even higher. So what I'm saying to you is it totally critical that you stay right at that 19%? Not for what you're doing. Not for what you're doing. My pigs, for instance, in the summertime, I told you we run a butcher shop and we may butcher 250 birds on a Friday. From those birds, we've got heads, feet, guts. I mean, it's fresh chicken. It might sound a little gross to you, but countries that I've lived in, they don't throw the heads away. They don't throw the feet away because I've had to eat those. Now that's what is available for you. As a matter of fact, they see that as better than say the breast meat because it's just dry and all that. I don't like breast meat either. But so we give that to the chickens, and on that day, they're getting what is the percentage of that the chicken guts, what's the percentage there? Probably pretty high. I don't know. I never sent it in to have it tested. But that's not how our operation is. So they're getting a whole lot of protein there. And, maybe the next day they'll get just nothing but hay. Or they might be on a forage field where they're getting nothing but turnips or nothing but field peas. What I'm saying here is if you return to the natural world where pigs were before they were domesticated by us, they may come across a dead dinosaur, for instance, and they'll be eating nothing but protein for a week or 2 weeks or a month or a year, if it was a stegosaurus. And I don't know if that really happened, but what I'm saying is their diet doesn't need to be totally balanced out. And I think people really get hung up on that, especially homesteaders that are doing the research and they'll come across somebody that it's got to be, I've had people correct me on that before. And, I don't even know how many days old my pigs are when I process them. And I really don't care. It's not, I'm not going for any kind of record on that. So that's where I come down on that. So I think that was Jonathan that asked me that. And there you go. I won't have to ask that next one. I saw a couple of questions in there. Is there anything that I need to engage on now? Holy smokes, 1 hour and 53 minutes. It's only supposed to be an hour long. And you guys have hung in there. Well, I appreciate that. This is a pleasure. Been looking forward to doing this all day. I'm going to sign off for now, just so I don't want to clutter up the airwaves so somebody else can come on. And we will be back at you tomorrow night, same bat time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but it's the more traditional show with Jill. However, she assures me she's going to add in some cool stuff with the Zoom call. So if you want to come on and engage, one-on-one, you'll be able to do that. So we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, anyone can farm. Get out there and get prepped. Get your farming on. I'll see you.